How to Stop Spiraling, a Biblical Framework for Anxiety. Peace is possible, even when your mind feels like a runaway train. Calm is not just a feeling reserved for people with perfect lives. It is a promise written into Scripture for anyone willing to fight for it. And freedom from the 2 a.m. panic loop is closer than you think. Welcome back. Today we are breaking down one of the most common battles believers face in the quiet hours, the anxious spiral. That moment when a single worried thought slips in, and 10 minutes later you have lost your job, ruined your health, and destroyed your future, all inside your own head. It feels impossible to stop once it starts, but it is not impossible. We are going to walk through the anxiety framework, the what, the why, and the how of pulling your mind out of a tailspin using ancient biblical wisdom. By the end of this video, you will have a practical 4-step tool you can use the next time your thoughts begin to spin. Let's get into it. So let's start with the first question. What exactly is a spiral? In simple terms, a spiral is a loop. A stressful thought enters your mind. That thought triggers a physical reaction. Your heart races, your chest tightens, your stomach drops. And that physical reaction convinces your brain that the danger is real, which produces even more stressful thoughts. Around and around it goes, faster and faster, until you feel completely out of control. Here is the key thing to understand. A spiral is your mind trying to control a future that has not happened yet. It grabs a single what if and builds an entire disaster movie around it. And while you are watching that movie, you are no longer living in the present, the only place where you can actually experience God's peace. The spiral drags you out of today and traps you in a fictional, frightening tomorrow. The Bible is not silent about this experience. King David, a man after God's own heart, knew this feeling intimately. In the Psalms, he writes about his fainting heart. He cries out that his soul is downcast and disturbed within him. In Psalm 61, he prays, "When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." Notice that David does not pretend to be fine. He does not bottle it up or fake a smile. He names the overwhelmed feeling honestly, and then he turns it toward God. That is our first clue. Spiraling is not a sign that your faith is broken. It is a normal human response to a fallen world. The question is not whether anxious thoughts will come. The question is what you will do when they arrive. Which brings us to our second question. Why do we need a specific biblical framework for this? Why can't we just tell ourselves to stop thinking about it? Because that does not work. Try it sometime. Tell yourself, do not think about your worry. What happens? You think about it more. You cannot fight a thought with silence. An empty mind does not stay empty. It simply waits for the next anxious thought to move in and take over. This is exactly why the Apostle Paul gives us a strategy, not just a command. In Philippians chapter 4, Paul tells us to guard our hearts and our minds. And the word he chooses there is powerful. The Greek word for guard is phoreo. It is a military term. It describes stationing a garrison of armed soldiers around a city to keep invaders out. Think about what that means. Paul is not telling you to relax and hope the anxiety goes away. He is telling you to post a watch. He is describing active defense. Your mind is a city, and every passing thought is approaching the gates. If you leave those gates unguarded, every anxious thought walks straight in and sets up camp. Before long, your mind is not your own. It is an occupied territory. So the goal is not to suppress anxiety. It is not to shove it down and hope it disappears. The goal is to station truth at the door. We replace the lie with what is real. We post a guard made of God's promises, and we decide what gets to enter and what gets turned away. That is the why. We need a framework because the battle is real, and you cannot win a real battle with wishful thinking. You win it with a plan. So here is the plan. How do you actually stop a spiral while it is happening? We are going to use a 4-step framework drawn straight from Philippians 4, verses 6 through 8. I want you to remember it with one simple word. T-E-A-R. The T-E-A-R filter. Let's break down each letter. The first letter is T, and it stands for Tether. When you spiral, your mind is living in the future, in a tomorrow that may never come. So the first move is to tether yourself back to the present. Ground yourself physically. Name 3 things you can see. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your breath going in and out. Why does this matter? Because Scripture tells us in Psalm 46 that God is a very present help in trouble. Not a distant help, not a future help, a present help. God is not waiting for you in next week's disaster. He is with you in this breath, in this room. Tethering yourself to the present is how you meet the God who is already there. The second letter is E, and it stands for express. Philippians 4:6 says, "By prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." So express everything. And I mean everything. This is not the moment for polite, dressed-up, churchy prayers. If you are terrified, tell him you are terrified. If you are angry, say so. If you feel like you are drowning, pour that out. David did this constantly. He held nothing back from God. So take the anxiety that is swirling inside your chest and dump it out. Not onto your friends, not onto social media, but onto God. Cast your cares on him because, as Peter writes, he cares for you. The spiral grows in secret. It loses its power the moment you speak it honestly to your Father. The third letter is A, and it stands for Audit. Now you take the thought that is driving the spiral and you put it on trial. You audit it. Ask one simple question. Is this actually true, or am I guessing? Here is what you will discover almost every time. Most spirals are not built on facts. They are built on what-ifs. What if I lose my job? What if the diagnosis is bad? What if they leave me? These are not realities. They are predictions. They are guesses about a future you cannot see. When you hold the thought up to the light and ask, "Do I actually know this is true?" Most of the time, the honest answer is no. And a guess has far less power over you than a fact. The fourth letter is R, and it stands for replace. This is where the garrison takes its post. Philippians 4:8 tells us to think about whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. So you replace the what if with a what is. You audited the lie. Now you station the truth. What is true? God is still on the throne. You are still breathing. You are held by a love that nothing can separate you from, and you have enough grace for the next 60 seconds. You replace the imaginary disaster with the solid ground of God's promises. That is how you guard the gate. Tether, express, audit, replace. The T-E-A-R filter. And here is one last thing I want you to hold on to. You do not need enough grace for next week. You do not need enough grace for next year. God never promised to hand you a year's supply of strength all at once. He promised His mercies are new every morning. You only need enough grace for the next breath, the next minute, the next small step. And that grace is always, always available. So the next time a thought creeps in at 2 a.m. and your mind starts to spin, do not let it run wild. Do not try to win with silence. Run it through the filter. Tether yourself to the present. Express it all to God. Audit the thought for truth. And replace the lie with what is real. Let the garrison guard your mind. That is the biblical framework for anxiety. If this brought you a sense of peace today, share it with someone who needs this reminder. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next framework. And remember, your peace is worth guarding. Take a breath. You are not alone in this. I will see you in the next one. God bless you.